Greetings, system failure listeners. Nate here with your weekly essay read, this one entitled Priesthoods and Pestilence, and subtitled How COVID Became the New Black Death. Key takeaways. Number 1, like the church during the Middle Ages, science is today's reality-defining authority. Number 2, the COVID pandemic was similar to the Black Death in that it undermined faith in authority. Number 3, the history of peer review is a prime example of corruption in the sciences. Church authority versus scientific authority. The Roman Catholic Church was the authority that defined reality during the Middle Ages. It viciously prosecuted anyone who dared to question its doctrine. Giordano Bruno was a notable heretic who was burned at the stake for his suggestion that stars are other distant suns. Fear of a similar fate compelled Nicholas Copernicus to wait until his deathbed to publish the theory that the Earth revolves around the sun. For corroborating Copernicus' findings by peering through his newfangled telescope, the Church placed Galileo under house arrest for life. Because Copernicus, Galileo, and others like them were ultimately proven correct, the Church forfeited its monopoly on the definition of reality. And once the fallibility of the Church was publicly exposed, the institution of science picked up its fallen mantle of authority. Today, science defines reality for the general public as the Church once did. The modern priests who separate myth from fact on behalf of the public now wear white lab coats instead of clerical frocks. Heretics are no longer burned at the stake, but those who dare to question science still endure devastating reputational harm. Instead of suffering in the dungeons of the Inquisition, modern heretics suffer from social marginalization and professional disqualification. A 1933 mural by famed Mexican artist Diego Rivera vividly illustrates the point. He evoked religious iconography by recreating the Madonna with Child motif that dominated artwork during the Middle Ages. But in his mural, the child is receiving a vaccination shot from a scientist dressed in a white lab coat. 3 similarly garbed wise men populate the background. Diego Rivera cleverly captured the authoritative parallel between the medieval church and modern science with his mural, which serves as the title card to this essay. The general public doesn't conduct experiments. Neither do most of us read peer-reviewed studies. Instead, we take the declarations of the scientific authorities on faith, just as the medieval public accepted the doctrine of the Roman Catholic Church. COVID was the new Black Death. The Black Death played a major role in undermining the credibility of the medieval church during the late Middle Ages. Not only was the church exposed as powerless to stop the dying, but priests died in even greater numbers than the laity because their last rites duties brought them into disproportionate contact with the pathogen. The church claimed a monopoly on direct contact with God, but grave doubts about that claim began to fester in the minds of the public after the pandemic. The recent COVID-19 pandemic exposed our modern scientific authorities in a manner eerily reminiscent of the church's exposure during the Black Death. During that time, politicians and corporations borrowed the good name of science to exaggerate claims about the efficacy of mRNA therapy. Strong initial assertions about vaccines preventing transmission turned out to be less than accurate. This co-opting of science was met with some resistance. The Great Barrington Declaration of 2020 shows that it's not the principles of science that have become corrupt, but rather the institution that has become flawed. For better or for worse, public skepticism towards scientific authority is on the rise in the aftermath of COVID. Just as skepticism toward the Roman Catholic Church took root in the aftermath of the Black Death. Although the COVID pandemic didn't come with the catastrophic loss of life that made the Black Death one of history's most terrifying episodes, it did undermine the credibility of the authorities, just as the plague did back in the 1300s. The financial scam involved with peer review. The notion of peer review is regarded as the gold standard in scientific research. But such was not always the case. From the time of Copernicus and Galileo all the way up until the 1960s, peer review was not the fixture in the sciences that it is today. Google's Ngram viewer, which visualizes the frequency of words or phrases over time by analyzing the text of millions of digitized books, proves the point beyond any doubt. It was Robert Maxwell who popularized peer review in the early 1960s to sell academic journals. Maxwell owned the Pergamon Press, a publisher of such journals. By normalizing the concept of peer review, he made his academic journals into a guaranteed subscription at every university in the world. Maxwell's 59 Pergamon academic journals in 1960 ballooned to 418 journals by 1992. He made a fortune on the resulting subscriptions, and that fortune is a big reason why peer review is the gold standard today. Robert Maxwell was a Jewish Czechoslovakian who managed to escape from the Nazis and spy for the British during World War II. But Maxwell's true loyalties apparently lay with Israel. His contacts with communist leaders in 1948 were crucial to the Czechoslovakian decision to arm Israel in the Arab-Israeli War. He was rumored to be a Mossad asset, and after his death in 1991, Maxwell was given a state funeral in Israel. The most interesting thing about Robert Maxwell, however, is that his daughter is Ghislaine Maxwell, accomplice to noted sex trafficker and financier Jeffrey Epstein. This connection, along with Epstein's own obsession with science, provides a penetrating insight into a corrupt overlap between high finance, international geopolitics, and the institution of science. That corruption is similar to the corruption that undermined the reputation of the Roman Catholic Church during the late Middle Ages. As controversy over Jeffrey Epstein swirls in the post-COVID era, we find ourselves in a historical moment reminiscent of the aftermath of the Black Death. Then as now, it's dawning on the public that trusted authorities have made compromises with the truth to preserve power and money. Conclusion. The point of this essay is not to suggest that science itself is either good or bad. Like the medieval church, science started out as a plucky, popular rebellion against entrenched, established authority. These institutions defy simple categories like good and evil. Rather, they change over time. Both institutions arose during transition periods between major economic systems. As the slave economy of Rome crumbled, Christianity emerged as a rejection of that cruel economic hierarchy to become the state religion of the empire in its twilight. And as the feudal system decayed, the scientific revolution swept away church authority and ultimately replaced it. A great irony of history is that these institutions arose as revolutions against corrupt authorities and became the authorities themselves, only to succumb to corruption over time, just as the old authorities had. If this historical pattern holds, the scientific authorities are due for replacement as the modern capitalist economic system circles the drain. The COVID pandemic provided us with a salient clue that this historical pattern is indeed persisting. Alrighty, folks. Well, that does it for this week's audio essay. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, consider swinging by systemfailure.org. There you can enter your email address to receive the text version of these essays every single Sunday morning in your email inbox. Advantages of the text version are particularly exaggerated this week because I've got the Google Ngram graph showing the incidence of the word peer review on display as an image, and also you can view Diego Rivera's famous mural from Detroit, which is the title card to this essay. Furthermore, over at systemfailure.org, if you'd like to get in touch with either Brian or myself, you could accomplish that feat over on the About page. Simply click on the appropriate name. All right, well, I'll be back on Monday with a regularly scheduled edition of the System Failure Podcast with Brian. Can't wait to talk to you all then. In the meantime, hope you're having a great week.